the fatal flaw of the DualSense Edge. Sony is giving you a big free upgrade to start the year. Here's how to make sure your PS5 is ready to go. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to PSReady. The first thing I have for you guys today is a cool accessory for either your brand new DualSense that you got when God of War Ragnarok came out, or if you picked up one of the $49 DualSenses that have been on sale since Black Friday, or if you're planning on picking up a DualSense Edge this January. It's a quick charging stand from Razer, which yeah, it's a third-party accessory, but I thought it was worth highlighting because it actually has some cool features. So over on the Xbox side, I have a bunch of these quick charging stands already because I bought the Cyberpunk 2077 Xbox One controller, and I also bought the Boba Fett Series X controller that came along with a matching stand. And the big upgrade from those stands to this one is that this one has a USB-C port on the back and it's weighted, which honestly solves the two biggest issues I had with those stands, because those stands before, they felt kind of cheap. They had their own proprietary like plug into the wall type charger situation, and I had never left the things plugged in. I basically used them as stands for my controllers. But this one is cool because it has USB-C port on the back and comes with a USB A to C cable, so you can plug it into the back port of your PlayStation 5. And also, if you have the Midnight Black plates, controller, and headset going on, this matches it because it's a black stand. But you can also get it in 5 other colors to match up with any of the other plates you might have. There are a few things that differentiate it from the official PlayStation 1. First of all, this only charges one controller, but if you have one controller in it, it's also just a nice stand for your controller. This one's also going to work with the DualSense Edge, which is really cool. It's $40 versus $30, but you're also getting a much more premium feeling device out of it, so I feel like that $10 is worth it. And finally, you're gonna have the Razer logo on the front of the stand, which if you get the black one, it's not gonna stand out too much. That's kind of why I like Razer. Their logo is kind of muted, and I kind of think the Three Snakes logo is actually pretty cool. So I'm probably gonna order one of these after this video, so if you wanna pick one up for yourself, I'll have it linked down in the description. I just wanted to give you guys a heads up because we'll talk about why you're gonna want a quick charging stand for the DualSense Edge in a minute. This video is sponsored by Hero Wars. Can't wait for Christmas break? Yes, I know Christmas is right around the corner, but you don't have to wait for a particular date to have fun. Stop waiting for Christmas. You deserve a gift today. Have fun and relax with Hero Wars right now. Hero Wars is a fantasy online action RPG game with plenty of PvP modes. There are 6 different modes available in this game, starting with Arena, and then you have Airship, Outland, Guild, Infinite Tower, and Grand Arena. In Hero Wars, everyone can find a character that suits themselves. There's cyborgs, there's aliens, there's vampires, there are tons of options. It's super easy to get started, but assembling the team of perfect heroes is where the real game lies. For example, Mojo the Shaman can't heal Darkstar the Elf as efficiently as good Grandma Martha can, while the Slow Cleaver makes a great pair with the Swift Isaac. The best time to start playing Hero Wars is December 24th, the night before Christmas. But if you start now, you can get lots of presents and other cool items. Collect new heroes, decorate the Christmas tree, progress through the advent calendar, and piece together the mysterious story. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. You can get 30,000 coins, 600 emeralds, and 5 awesome heroes to get started with in Hero Wars right now. All you have to do is head to the description and click the link to start playing Hero Wars now. Don't wait for Christmas, give yourself a gift today. Download and play Hero Wars now. Thanks again to Hero Wars for sponsoring this video. Guys, I've seen all of your comments, I've seen your videos on Twitter, I've gotten your DMs. The PS5 is available. One of the coolest videos I've seen so far is like hundreds of PS5s lining the first wall you see when you go into a Costco. And it's a bunch of God of War Ragnarok bundles. And yeah, if you're a dad out there or you're excited to get a PS5 for Christmas, that's going to be a really cool game to be your first PS5 game. I don't know what it is about God of War, but as soon as I finished up Ragnarok, I jumped right back into 2018. I'm giving it a 3rd playthrough. I just beat Thor Has 2 Kids, and I just fought one of them. I don't really want to spoil it for those of you who haven't played it out there, but it's really cool how that game holds up so well after playing Ragnarok. The differences are super slight, so this might be a little tough for those of you out there who are expecting to get one, but if you are expecting to get one for Christmas, I guess just show this video to your parents, because now I can talk directly to them. Because every Christmas when new consoles get opened up, the 2 main things that happen are A, you get a bunch of people who don't know how to play Call of Duty in Call of Duty, and you can XP farm all day. It was awesome making that transition from being the squeaker to being the squeaker attacker. It was a really cool time in my life. I got a ton of XP one year. And also the other thing is that the PSN is going to be slammed, and setting up a new PlayStation or PlayStation account is going to be very very tricky on Christmas Day. And no one, especially on the parent side, I think I'm addressing you at this point, parents, wants to have their kid be upset that they can't use their brand new PlayStation. And the difference between the PS5 to the PS4 is there's no way to get onto the home screen really without setting it up. You need to have the app downloaded on your phone, you need to have a PSN account set up, and you need to be like on the Wi-Fi connected to your console. So make sure you have all of that ready to go. And the other recommendation I have for you is do not set up a parental control account or an account that makes your kid have a kid account, because the PlayStation Network does not allow you to retroactively change the date of your age. So a lot of people have been screwed by having an underage account on PlayStation and then they're stuck with it. And that causes problems with downloading digital games. It causes problems with going on the store. It causes problems with watching content on YouTube. You really don't want your kids to have one of these accounts with parental controls on it. Another thing I highly recommend doing is picking up a year of PlayStation Plus, whether it's essential or extra. You can definitely avoid premium. I think that's overpriced for what you're getting. I would start with extra also because it comes with a huge library of games and it pairs perfectly with that God of War Ragnarok bundle. So right there on Christmas Day, not only is your kid or you going to have God of War Ragnarok as soon as you open up the PS5 box, you're also going to have an entire library of awesome games that includes some of the best titles for PlayStation 5, like Demon's Souls, Ghost of Tsushima's Director's Cut, and Returnal. You're also getting Deathloop in there. I think Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate's in there. I'm pretty sure, you might have to fact check me on this one, Red Dead Redemption 2 is in there. Like, there are some of the best games from the last generation, and the beginning of this one already included with that extra subscription. So yeah, your kids are gonna ask you for it regardless. I would just have it ready to go, added to their account from the moment the console turns on Christmas Day. Another thing I would recommend doing is charging up the controller. The DualSense, I'm sure you've heard, does not have the best battery life, and it really sucks that the cord that comes with the PS5 is not long enough to actually like sit on the couch and play the game while the controller is charging. I used to use a Nintendo Switch charger to charge my controller while I was playing. Now I use the Steam Deck charger because that works totally fine. But if you don't want your kids to have to like charge the controller before they use the PlayStation 5, you're just gonna wanna pop that thing out, plug it in with the USB cord that's included. The front port is more reliable for some reason than the back port, so just use the front port on the PlayStation 5. But if you wanna know if it's charging or not, it'll glow orange. So yeah, the like little light bar around the touchpad will glow orange if it's charging. If you plug that thing into like your iPhone charger or something like that and it's not charging, now you know why. If you wanna be super cool, another thing you can do is get an SSD now, because that's another thing your kids are definitely gonna be asking you for in a matter of months. I mean, Call of Duty Warzone, that is a huge game. You've also got stuff like 2K that's taking up over 100 gigabytes. You're only gonna have 680 gigabytes of usable storage on the PlayStation 5 out of the box, so just do it now. Get an SSD while they're on sale. I recommend the Samsung 980 Pro, but I've got other options linked down in the description. And then all you have to do to install this is pop off the side of the PlayStation 5, remove the screw on the SSD tray, which is very obvious when you're looking at the side of the PlayStation 5, and then you pop the SSD in, screw it in, put everything back together, and then the first time you boot it up, it'll warn you. It'll say, hey, there's a new SSD in here, we're gonna format it. Do you wanna format it? You just say yes, and then you've got suddenly 2 terabytes of extra storage. And I would definitely go with 2 terabytes just so they never have to worry about it. So during that first time setup, your PlayStation's going to download the latest firmware update for you, so you should be good to go with that. But one thing I would say is if you get that God of War bundle, if you're buying your kids games on discs, open up those discs, pop them in the PlayStation 5, make sure they install, make sure all the patches download. That is going to be the worst part of Christmas Day. If you did all the things I already mentioned and didn't do this, it's gonna ruin Christmas Day. It's so weird to think about this, but the PSVR 2 is right around the corner. Like, we're at the end of December, which means February is only 2 months away. And the biggest problem I think people are upset about with the PSVR 2 is A, there are not going to be physical games for this headset like there were with the PSVR 1, and B, there's no real upgrade path for a lot of games that are coming to the headset. But thankfully, what should be one of the best launch day games for the PSVR 2 is going to be a completely free upgrade if you already own the base game, and that is Resident Evil Village. Now, the cool thing about this is that it's not going to be some half-assed VR conversion, because Resident Evil Biohazard, Resident Evil 7, was built with VR in mind, which is a big reason why they switched over to the first-person perspective for that game. And now with Resident Evil Village, it's a more advanced first-person perspective game. So now you're going to have an even better VR mode than we had in Resident Evil 7, which is good because out of all the VR games I've played, which I have played quite a few of them at this point, the only one that's ever made me motion sick was Resident Evil 7 because you had to basically play it sitting down and use the DualSense controller. And using a regular controller to move and then having your head also move, but then you're sitting in place, it feels really weird. So now you have the Sense controllers. It looks like it's going to be a full conversion for the PSVR 2, and it'll look a lot better than it did with Resident Evil 7 on the PSVR 1. I don't know if there's plans to do this or if they've announced it, but I really hope there are plans for Sony to make Capcom go back and port over Resident Evil 7 to the PSVR 2 to take advantage of the Sense controllers, because between the two games, I like Resident Evil 7 more. It's much more of a horror game. It has a lot scarier of a vibe than something like Resident Evil Village, which I would definitely say is more action horror, not even horror action. So I'd love for them to port it over to PSVR 2 because it's going to play so much better, and they've been buying exclusivity on that game's VR mode for so long. It's like, just give it the respect it deserves, port it up to PSVR 2. But yeah, the cool thing about Village getting a free port to PSVR 2 is the fact that this is like a full-length game. A lot of VR games aren't full-length. They're like 6 to 7 hours. They say they have a lot of replayability, but what they really always include is like an arena mode, something you can endlessly play to add value to the games. And they're usually pretty close to full price. Like, they're sometimes a little bit cheaper, but a lot of the time they're pretty close to full price. So knowing that on launch, if you already own Resident Evil Village, which honestly everyone should because it's gone on sale for like $10 so many times at this point, you can just download and play Resident Evil Village day one. That's awesome. And the last story I have for you guys today is that the DualSense Edge reviews are in, and they're looking pretty good. Overall, people say it just feels like a much more premium regular DualSense with a few added features, which honestly, I feel like that's what we were all expecting at this point. I think it is awesome that the paddles are removable. They say they're all metal. They feel very similar to the paddles on the Elite Series 2, but overall, this feels like a much stronger and much more rigid controller than what you get with the Xbox Elite Series 2, which I love. Another cool thing I saw people praising is the trigger locks, because like concept-wise, it's hard to imagine that not breaking super easily, right? Because they have the adaptive triggers in there. There's a lot of mechanisms going on with those adaptive triggers, but if you lock the triggers to make them like hair triggers like you would want in an FPS or something like that, you'd think it would kind of screw with the adaptive trigger aspect of the controller, but people said it felt really durable and it doesn't feel like it'll break all that easily, and that's good because that was the one big thing I was worried about. It's also cool that they expanded on that idea of making the like rougher texture on the controller, like the grip of the controller, be the face buttons of the PS5 controller, or I guess every other PlayStation controller. You've got the square, circle, cross, triangle all over the device. I think they have like 4 million of them or something like that. And now there's even more. And one other thing I didn't know going into these reviews is that the grip is going to be rubber on this controller, which is great. I just hope it doesn't peel off or get white and weird texture like it did on the Elite Series 1 and some of the Elite Series 2s. But there is one big flaw that's really bugging people with this controller, and I knew it was going to be a problem because you just knew, right? It's the battery life. The battery in this controller, because it has the exact same chassis pretty much as the regular DualSense, is going to be shorter than what you have on the original DualSense. And the reason for that really comes down to things like the profile switching, the fact that you can change the trigger pull length, like all the extra features that are included with this controller are going to affect the battery life. And that's frustrating just because I thought that was going to be something that they really worked on between the DualShock 4 and the DualSense. The DualShock 4 had terrible battery life, mainly because of that light bar in the back of the controller. And they couldn't get rid of that on the DualShock 4 because it was required for the PSVR 1. You needed the light for the camera to sense. You don't really need that on the DualSense, and the light has been toned down a ton by just having it around the actual touchpad, which has come in handy in games like Destiny or God of War Ragnarok, so I'm totally fine with that. So to know the DualSense Edge has even less battery life, that sucks because over time, that battery is going to get less and less chargeable, right? Like any battery, like any lithium-ion battery, you lose, what do you call it? Thankfully, Sony thought ahead here though a little bit, and the cable that comes along with this controller is 2.8 meters, which is something like 9 feet almost, and it has a lock. So when you plug it into the controller, you can lock it into the controller, which makes your controller completely wired. Like it's not gonna fly out while you're playing a game or something like that. And the cool thing about using it wired is it eliminates 100% of the latency, and on PC, you basically have to use the DualSense wired unless you're using Bluetooth or something like DS4 Windows. I don't like doing either of those things because you get latency there. So I will be using this controller on PC wired, and to charge it, I'll use it wired on my PS5. So that is nice that that's included in the box. I just wish they would have gone the extra mile and improved the battery life, because this is supposed to be the perfected version of the controller, and having less battery life than the one that costs way less is not perfected in my opinion.